Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Growing Up in Idaho. We're talking about the good old days in Boise on this episode, and I hope you enjoy this. These are recollections of experiences that I had as a child growing up in Boise. And at that time, my dad was a police officer. He worked for Ada County Sheriff's Department as a deputy. And occasionally he would come home in his car dressed in his uniform and pick up a few things or grab a bite to eat and head back out on the road. And he worked as a deputy to support himself going to school. He was a full-time student at Boise State College at the time. It hadn't turned into a university yet. And so he was a busy guy. And we got to see him occasionally. Most of the time, he was a policeman at night, working night shift, and a student during the day. So when he was home, he was tired and in bed, sleeping. And so as young kids, we learned that when Dad was home, in bed asleep, we were supposed to be quiet when we went into the house. And so we spent a lot of time outside playing, winter, summer, fall, spring, whenever it was, whatever season it was. Usually we were outside. So I want to talk about one particular day. My brother was in school, first grade, and Dad came out while I was watching TV. And here's the ritual, just so you know, that I had pretty much each day, except for Saturday and Sunday. The weekdays, the fairly normal days, I would get up in the morning, put my clothes on, grab some breakfast, and watch Captain Kangaroo. And if you've never heard of Captain Kangaroo, you should look him up and see some of the old shows that he did. And after Captain Kangaroo, at some point, Jack LaLanne came on. And Jack was one of those guys that was kind of before his time. He was an exercise guy, and he would do all of his exercises, usually sitting in a chair or somewhere in his house. And he had big looking muscles, really in shape. And so I watched Jack LaLanne. I wanted to be strong. And I would imitate things that he did, figuring it would make me strong. Anyway, that was the routine. And on Saturdays, as I mentioned, that routine would change. We would get up early in the morning so that we could start watching cartoons. And when I say we, my brother, Mike, and me. And we were the oldest two kids in the family. And so cartoons, went for at least a half a day on Saturday, and we had our favorites. Of course, when you only have a couple of channels on TV, you don't have much to pick from. And so we had a routine. We would watch our favorite cartoons. Well, this was a weekday. Dad came out. He said, "Hey, Jeff, do you want to go with me and do a little police work?" I'd never had him ask me that ever. And so I said, "Yeah, of course I do. What are we going to be doing? Driving around in your car, chasing bad guys?" That's kind of the perception that I had of my dad's work. He chased around the bad guys and caught them and hauled them off to jail. That was pretty much how I figured he spent all of his day working. And I didn't know what he did in college. I had no idea. I just knew he had a bunch of books and had to read them and take tests. Anyway, so I said, "Yes, of course, Dad, I want to go to work. What are we going to be doing?" He said, "Well, some lady apparently crashed her car somewhere up near Lucky Peak Reservoir, and we got to go look around and see if we can find her car and her." And I said, well, she must be dead if she crashed her car and nobody can find her. And Dad said, yeah, that may be the case. But we're going to go up and take this little army Jeep and we're going to look around. We're going to drive around the foothills. And one of the other police officers, one of the other deputies is going to go with us. So you'll have to ride in the back seat. But there's no top on this Jeep and it'll be a lot of fun. The weather's nice. It'll be fun. Now, it never occurred to me what would happen if we found this lady that we were supposedly looking for. But I didn't care. I just wanted to go out and spend some time with Dad, and looking for a dead person just seemed to make it all that more intriguing and mysterious. I had no idea what a dead person looked like. And I didn't really want to find out. But I did want to spend time with Dad. So away we went. And we picked up this Jeep, and my dad met his partner, and we went out. We unhooked the Jeep, we towed it, and then unhooked it and got into it and drove around. And we just drove all over the foothills. Now, I remember a few distinct things that happened in that little period of time when we were driving around in that Jeep. My dad's partner was driving. So Dad was sitting in the passenger seat. I was in the back. And suddenly a rabbit ran across in front of us and into the sagebrush. Well, this guy that was driving, my dad's partner, pulled his pistol out and started shooting away at this rabbit. Of course, there's no top, there's no doors on this Jeep. But my dad's partner stretched his arm across my dad in front of him and shot away with his pistol. And my dad is a safety freak when it comes to guns. And he taught all those safety things to my brother and me. Well, I could tell that this act, shooting away in front of my dad, crossing over in front of him with his pistol, pissed my dad off. But Dad's a good-natured guy, and he didn't say anything, but I could tell from the chuckle and the look on his face that he was not happy. And but we went on. We spent, it seemed to me like we spent the better part of the day driving around the foothills and all the area around Lucky Peak. If you're familiar with that area, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, just look Lucky Peak up on Google Earth or Google Maps, and you'll see kind of how the terrain lies. It's a reservoir outside of Boise, Idaho, and it's a pretty good sized reservoir. And there's a lot of foothills, sagebrush foothills around that reservoir. Anyway, we had a good time. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And here's kind of the interesting thing. When you're a young kid and you get to do cool things, like riding around in an army Jeep with your dad and his partner, looking for a dead person, that elevates you pretty high on the totem pole with all of the other friends that you have in the neighborhood. Because, of course, those friends of yours who didn't get to go on this cool adventure are home working for their moms doing chores. And so I felt sorry for those guys that day. And I felt a little bit elevated, like I was just a little bit higher up on the fun meter, on the adventure meter, on the cool things I got to do. And that's kind of interesting that we have those perceptions as kids. We kind of gauge our elevation against the cool things we get to do and our friends don't get to do. And so it creates this little pecking order, I guess you would say. And of course, everybody gets to do cool stuff. But that day, I felt just a little higher. Well, we never did find a dead person. We didn't even find a wrecked car. And, but we had a great time. And at the end of the adventure, we went back to the police station. They parked the Jeep, got everything unloaded. Dad and I headed for home. And on the way, we stopped by the service station to get some gas, and which always meant, usually, that I would get a Big Hunk candy bar. That was my favorite. They were really popular in those days. And Dad bought me a Big Hunk. We went on home, and I got to eat that Big Hunk and think about all the day's adventures. And it was a great time. I'll never forget it. Thanks for listening. Growing Up in Idaho, the good old days.